Hello, people of Earth and beyond. My name is Shannon, and today I am reviewing the last book of the Lockwood and Company series, The Empty Grave. All cards on the table. We're going to be talking in spoilers today as I give you my thoughts on The Empty Grave and the Lockwood and Company series as a whole. Spoilers ahead, viewer discretion advised. I have made non-spoiler reviews for the previous 4 books, so I will link those in the description. And one more time, for good measure, what is this series about? England has a problem. Literally. That's what they call their ghost infestation. Yes. Ghost infestation. Our main character, Lucy Carlyle, is an agent working for Lockwood and Company. Basically, she gets rid of ghosts for a living. After having discovered a gate to the other side and being threatened by Penelope Fitz to stop snooping, Lockwood and Company decides to get to the bottom of everything. The 5th book picks up with Lockwood and Company investigating what the skull in the jar told them at the end of the last book, that Penelope Fitz, head of Fitz Agency and the most powerful woman in Britain, is actually her grandmother, Marissa Fitz. Marissa and Penelope Fitz are one and the same. Let's get right into it, shall we, with the pacing and the climax. I don't actually have anything to say about the characters this go around, except for that I love them and Lucy has redeemed herself. This book feels extremely fast-paced compared to the other 4. Granted, I read The Empty Grave in 2 days, so that might have been a factor, but it still feels as if there's not as much build-up, which isn't bad at all because Lockwood and Company has pretty much figured out everything they need to at this point, except for whether or not Marissa Fitz is still alive, which they get an answer to within the first few chapters. Spoilers, the answer is yes. After this, the plot feels incredibly coherent, especially when we get to the climax. It's hard to know exactly when the climax begins because a bunch of climactic scenes kind of flow into one another. And the way it's done is pretty beautiful. We see Julius Winkman again get resolution to his little plot point, and the villains are smart enough to take actions that actually drive the plot where it needs to go. I guessed that Lockwood and Company would somehow have to go to Fitz house to exit through that spirit gate, and Sir Rupert is smart enough to figure out where they'll go and head them off. There is a lot of walking on the other side, and it's never really explained why the ghosts are chasing them, but it feels suspenseful enough that it doesn't feel like it's dragging the plot down. And the team gets an important glimpse into what is really going on. And in the past, I've harped on action scenes moving too slowly, but that doesn't happen at all in this one. The only place that you could really say the action happens to slow down is when Lucy tries and fails to break the skull's jar and they stop and argue about it. But the action there literally pauses because Marissa Fitz stops to watch them argue. These aren't plot points per se, more story elements, and unfortunately a lot of the things I'm gonna say in this section are going to be a bit negative. First is the Orpheus Society. I think they were overplayed. They're made out to be this big, secretive organization, and then there's one confrontation with them and they don't even contribute that much to the villain. Actually, it's implied that Marissa Fitz doesn't need the plasm they collect, so why are they even there? The only noteworthy thing they do is kill Lockwood's parents, and speaking of which, the fact that Lockwood's parents were murdered is a great revelation, but it doesn't actually add much to the plot. Lockwood finds out during the confrontation with the Orpheus Society, so fighting them, or at least stealing from them, was already going to happen. And yes, he does fight Marissa Fitz, who probably ordered their murder, but Lucy was in danger and we already knew that Marissa was a villain, so again, he was going to do it anyway. You could say that it adds something to Lockwood's character, that it gives him a reason to avenge his parents and defy death. Yes, I can see that. But At the end of the day, it's a detail that really wouldn't have changed the story of that much if their deaths had been an actual accident, and it's trying to prove that the Orpheus Society is evil, which we already know because Orpheus Society and their cohorts hired someone to beat George nearly to death. You do not try to kill my chubby baby boy and get away with it! Moving on to foreshadowing Lockwood's death. It's not just this book, it's been happening since The Hollow Boy. I guessed that the fortunes would apply to someone else, especially since Lucy just automatically assumes that they apply to Lockwood, but it really feels like Jonathan Stroud was planning on killing off Lockwood and then just couldn't go through with it. Though it's not like he didn't have the guts to wrench my heart out before! I know. It's unfair to compare Lockwood and Company to a masterpiece like Bartimaeus, but since they are by the same author, I'd like to point out some differences in stylistic choices. Jonathan Stroud did not hold back with the feels in Bartimaeus. Everything in Lockwood and Company feels a little more toned down. Lockwood and Company is intended, if not for a younger audience, then at least for a more lighthearted one. I'm not complaining that Lucy and Lockwood get a happy ending, but foreshadowing so much and then not having it pay off is anticlimactic. Setting up for a character to die and then having them not is not really a good twist. What is a good twist is having an unexpected character die instead, which I love Quill Kipps, and his resurrection scene is hilarious, but I was ready to cry for him, and I didn't get to do that. The last critique I have is about the villains, more specifically Marissa Fitz. I simultaneously do and don't want to know more about her. I don't think that her Marissa persona was terribly fleshed out, but I think that learning more about her would confirm my suspicions. Her motivations are terribly basic. Youth and money, and also kind of power. With a premise as interesting as the problem, it seems like there could have been a much deeper and more interesting layer to her philosophy. At the end of the day, she's an effective villain, she's just kind of a basic one. So let's talk about the ending. It's satisfying enough. Everyone's safe and happy, all of our questions about Deeprak and the other side are answered. Here's the hitch. In a couple of previous reviews, I mentioned that it would be nice if Lucy picked up a hobby or something just to flesh out her character a bit. I dropped that idea when I realized that it wasn't going to happen. This series is incredibly ghost-centric, which in and of itself is not a bad thing. But the problem cannot end because if it did, Lockwood and Company would have nothing else to do. They literally have no other skills. Now, Jonathan Stroud does not like his endings to completely change the way the world works because that's not realistic and that's fine. But here it just feels like nothing really changed at all. The Skull's sacrifice, however, hit me right in the heart. And the trust that happens between him and Lucy is beautiful, and even if it's a little late, it's nice to see Lucy admitting that she does actually care about him after all. I enjoyed the Lockwood and Company experience immensely. It's fun, it's witty, it's gripping. The characters at times are painfully human, but they're allowed to make mistakes and grow. I would say a prominent theme is finding the things that make life worth living, which is counterbalanced by a theme of finding a way to respect the ones who lived before. Overall, an exciting journey with an amazing and lovable cast of characters. Well written, and definitely worth the read. That's all for today. Thank you so much for watching. Let me know in the comments your thoughts on Lockwood and Company and Jonathan Stroud in general. Go ahead and give this video a thumbs up while you're at it, and do yourself a favor. Go have a great day.